Disclaimer, this review is based on my experiences with the first 20 hours of the game. Dragonball Z Kakarot is a long RPG, and I am only into the Namek/Frieza saga in my playthrough of the game, so everything I say is based upon what I have experienced thus far. Any issues later in the game than that I am not aware of as of the production of this video. It should be no surprise to anyone who's followed my productions that I have a thing for CyberConnect 2's games and media. The fact I can fit a .hack reference into anything I review if I so chose should serve as a testament to that. And thus it should be no surprise that I was ecstatic to learn they'd gotten a chance to work on more of Bandai's anime tie-in games once again, with the newest Dragon Ball game, Dragonball Z Kakarot. This isn't the first anime game they've done. They're more prominently known beyond .hack for perfecting their combat game mechanics through the annual Naruto Ninja Storm games, as well as the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure games, which the company was able to tap due to CEO Hiroshi Matsuyama's passionate love of manga in general, and those Shonen Jump titles in particular. So considering the wealth of Dragon Ball fighting games that have been boring and indistinguishable duds over the years despite that franchise's continuing popularity, well, it's overdue. I enjoy Dragon Ball FighterZ as much as the next guy, but I'm not exactly a person that's any good at fighting games. But an action RPG based on the Dragon Ball brand? That's a bit more up my alley, as my first Dragon Ball game, and the only one I still own, was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 for the PS2. And while more based on the fighting game mechanics for combat, it did have some action RPG elements to level up your preferred Z fighter for replay of the story, and have an easier time of the game overall with that one, and why Budokai 3 is still so highly beloved by a lot of people. The premise of this game is admittedly in no way original. You play as the franchise protagonist Son Goku and the other prominent characters of the franchise in a video game version of the story of Dragon Ball Z, and work your way through the arcs of the story. This is not new. Most Dragon Ball games, with rare exception, work exactly off of this kind of thing. But Kakarot distinguishes itself from most of those prior titles in that while it is retreading old ground with what it is doing, it is more unique in how it has you do it. The immersion here for a Dragon Ball game is borderline unprecedented in how it actually puts you in the shoes of Goku in exploring and fighting in Universe 7 against his enemies. Yeah, it's still Goku, but it's your Goku. You train him, you level him, you play CyberConnect's campy fun minigames with him to earn prizes and upgrade gear, and hunt through mini-quests that expand your capabilities. It's again why Budokai 3 ranks so highly with me and others of all the Dragon Ball games, as it's the closest equivalent to this we've really gotten in the past. Also, Monster Hunter gimmick for making a variety of food dishes out of ingredients, including random encounter monsters, which all give you unique stat boosts. Some people enjoy this kind of thing. Personally, it's not quite to my taste, but considering I was a Supreme Master Chef in World of Warcraft for the hour-long stat buffs I'd get from what I cooked, I can give it a mulligan. Gathering all the reagents for this kind of stuff is always a pain, though. For video game CGI recreations of the story, they've never looked better. As with their other anime tie-in games, CyberConnect has an attention to detail and accuracy in getting as much as they can right with the framing, staging, and modeling of such moments in honor and respect of the source material, with the expected humorous quirks thrown in here or there. There's no critical bias here in the depiction of these scenes, it's just as you'd remember them being. Just of course with a visual update to proper 1080 widescreen and the means of rendering them not possible with the original film rolls of the series from the 80s and 90s. Ones that unfortunately due to Funimation's tampering with the footage to make what was originally in full screen into a widescreen series in its common releases had the intended framing for it ruined. Seriously, Funimation, there was zero reason for you to do that and keep that as the only version you ever redistribute when it just looks so terrible. It's one of the reasons why I don't collect the Dragon Ball series of all the anime I have, and it's on my list for sins of the company. Alongside certain dub teams and divisions' antics regarding inserting Western pop culture and political references, the turning of series into straight-up gag dubs that ruin their intentions, and just a string of unnecessary dialogue alterations that aren't defensible as non-translatable term substitution that have ruined the appeal of numerous dubs of theirs, which the better factions of the company and other import companies in general know better than to do. But what really makes these scenes and the execution of the story stand out for me is they're expanded upon from what they were in the original manga and anime. Like, seriously, long-standing plot holes are plugged by respectful dialogue substitutions and elaboration, and characters have brand new interactions that fit the original story and depictions of the cast. Like, no Dragon Ball media's ever really done this to this extent. Yeah, a bunch of the games have had what-if scenarios by the dozen show up for fun with the characters, and the odds things went differently. It's why Dragon Ball Budokai 1, for example, has a lot of love for it as well. But not quite in this way. Hell, even what Dragon Ball Super tried to do in extending the arcs of the characters further doesn't feel as cohesive as the events of the various side missions do here. All these interactions feel consistent with canon. Like it was something that could have happened between the pages, between the scenes of the story. While it's ultimately just formally published fanfiction, it's the good kind of fanfiction. The Super Robot Wars style of fanfiction. The kind of fanfiction that plays with a premise the original creator didn't, as they wanted to focus on other things, and runs with what is expanded upon to a natural conclusion. It helps make the Dragon Ball universe be more distinct as a setting, something the Dragon Ball franchise has always struggled with in some way, shape, or form through its various incarnations, where we only care about specific places at the moment, and not necessarily how they all fit together, or what happens when someone isn't in the picture. That doesn't make Dragon Ball bad by any regard as a larger franchise, but honestly, this game makes me crave a version of the story with more effort put behind the nuances of its creation. Dragon Ball's creator Akira Toriyama is many things, but many published interviews have shown his tendency to fly by the seat of his pants when it comes to story creation and thinking things up as he goes along instead of having a true cohesive plan put together in advance that everything plays into. Case in point, Super Saiyans have golden blonde hair because he didn't want to go through the effort of coloring the pages post-transformation, which in turn entirely redefined how power-ups and superform transformations work across nearly all media forever in doing so. And it works for him, as when on a deadline, Toriyama was in the past a very creative and imaginative man, able to take any hindrance he had and out of spite to a shortcoming, turn it into an advantage. So none of this is a slight to him, as he did his job at the end of the day. However, he was never a person that expanded on the nuances of his universe or characters all that well, as he had no true interest in doing so. But the consistent thing with me in CyberConnect 2 products is their work and how they handle nuances to stories put in or made under their care makes me crave that other creators would think, make, and strive to be better. The combat system utilized here is, well, it's the mechanics from the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games. At least from what I saw of those games. I never took the time to play Xenoverse myself. And not actually a creation of CyberConnect. Frankly, I'm thankful it's at least a usable system, as from what I've seen, the Xenoverse games have a more usable system than more than half of the Budokai line ended up being, allowing for a fair amount of customization of your build once you unlock what you need. And it's distinct enough from the standard Dragon Ball game mechanics to more fit the action RPG role that I'm more adept at, though my usual issues with reaction times still seem to screw me when I attempt to block or dodge an enemy attack, only for my button actions to then shove me into set attack instead of avoiding the damage. Those more familiar with dealing with Xenoverse's mechanics will likely feel more at home here, and for the most part have a hell of a better time acquiring skills as well than the Xenoverse games, as long as you don't mind the resource collectathon. Which brings me to something that just annoys me and will more than likely turn some people off. I have made it no secret that I hate huge overworld or large gated maps for exploration, as there ends up being a lot of dead empty space that needlessly is included or artificially filled. And honestly, if it's building a pictured map of the Universe 7 Earth, I wouldn't have much of an issue with it, as the map does blend together the many locales of the world in a way not even Budokai 3 managed to achieve, as everything is explorable. However, the exploration map is completely god-awful terrible and does not allow you to zoom in enough to navigate, as the pointer for where you are in relation to everything is practically invisible. And what CyberConnect filled the empty space with is cooking ingredients you'll endlessly be collecting and these power orbs. You'll need to collect an infinite, obnoxious amount of 6 different types of these orbs to buy the skill upgrades for all your abilities throughout the game's progression trees, which are all locked off as you play until you hit a specified level, which will be very difficult to do early as random encounters give up completely garbage EXP at such a low rate that I've not seen in a modern RPG in some time, or until you otherwise pass story events. Fortunately, you can use items you get to customize a community skill board so you earn EXP in these orbs far faster, but it takes a while before you unlock it, or you start to see a tangible impact due to the prerequisites to get the earnings to come faster. and the base level gains for both needed to be much higher for it to not feel like a slog and to take as much time as it does. I like that the entire tree for skill gains and upgrades here is visible so you know what you will be getting over time, and it's not all obnoxiously blocked off, unlike, say, the Xenoverse games where you had to acquire the skills at random, or, say, Final Fantasy XIII where it was artificially imposing a level and ability cap on you, but the grind to be at a fair level with skills you can use to win, it's excessively time-consuming. I early grinded for hours in the Sane Saga sect of the story, and even the intermission sect that was put in as a breather, and I still ended up underleveled when I eventually got to Namek and had to struggle a lot. To say nothing of the earlier parts where if it wasn't a trash mob, I always felt extremely disadvantaged. So for those going into this blind, prepare to lose a lot of time fighting trash mobs before you'll have a chance to progress. Or if you prefer, cooking and collecting a lot of items to compound the stat boosts, which take almost as long. Though to make that worse, before the Sane Saga is over with, you unlock the ability to encounter stronger trash mobs. But the game's power tier scaling for the stronger mobs is ridiculously unfair. I went from encountering at best level 1 to 3 mobs while I was struggling to level Gohan past level 7, and try to take on the stronger enemy groups I had just unlocked, and got blindsided as the next strongest mob I could now take on, it was in the mid-level 20s. I was dead in seconds. To make sure this doesn't happen to you, your key sensing ability triggered by L1 when you're on the overworld map outside of battle can check the battle level of the trash mobs for you. And when you're out of the Saiyan Saga, the trash mobs levels do even out, so I can suddenly fight level 20 encounters at level 15. Because I'm just that good at CyberConnect-made games that a 5-level difference I can make work for me. But you'll inevitably need to stock up on a lot of healing drinks in advance of your game progression, so keep an eye out for the items you gather that have no other purpose than to be sold, so you can stock up early. And trust me, there's a lot of junk items you can sell for decent returns, so you won't be hurting for money. It's just getting everything else that's a pain. Also, there are unfortunately some glitches that I've encountered, but ones that thus far can be worked around. The big one I encountered is right as I got pulled into battle with the trash mob, I was over a time trial power orb. And when the mob was defeated, the game froze me in the same action moment, so I couldn't do anything, and it likely caused by the end of battle also triggering the orb, so the game didn't know what to do. Fortunately, even with this happening, I could still go out into the menu, and the game's included autosave feature made it so I only actually lost about a minute of playtime. But for those playing themselves, just be careful about fighting enemies within the space of the environmental orbs. The other significant bug is where the game just seems to move slowly when transitioning between different actions. This doesn't affect combat, mind you, but sometimes the game just moves sluggishly as we change what we're doing or when we're moving somewhere new on a big map. I'm not even sure what's the cause on this one. Is it the details on the map? Is the software struggling to accommodate the transition? It's not game-breaking in this case, but it does eat time. So overall, yeah, this isn't CyberConnect's best work, but it is good and consistent with their other anime-based video games. And considering they're working on several other games right now, and the time frame they had to make it not being long over a year, it's not unexpected to be roughed in some areas when it has to do with experience and item collection. But hey, in the realm of Dragon Ball games, which have a long history of ultimately being a fandom's love obsession away from being on the side of complete garbage, this objectively should end up rating pretty high on the charts of good ones, at least for the Dragon Ball game players that would actually appreciate an RPG. If you're looking to re-experience the Dragon Ball story with a ton of new side scenes for your favorite characters, and expansions that might have not gotten the spotlight earlier in the main series as much as they needed to be, or in the series' canons at all, it's certainly worth it to see all of CC2's signature character interplay kind of moments. Just make sure you're ready to do the same old dance of re-experiencing the story of the original series again before you do. And depending on how things go, I might end up coming back to this specific game and doing a full review of it in the future. We'll see. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is available right now where all games are sold. Charge your Ki Blasts, practice your transformation screens, and start your search for the Dragon Balls. I'm Shinta, and I'll see you all next time.